It's just after 2 a.m. yesterday morning. 3 minibuses arrive in Brook House detention centre near Gatwick Airport. They're here to deport a group of migrants and refugees, some of the thousands who have crossed the Channel on small boats this year. This is a cornerstone of Priti Patel's tough on immigration policy, all over the news this week. The Home Secretary wants to deport at least 1,000 people in this way by the end of the year. There were 30 migrants originally scheduled to fly on Thursday. At about 3 a.m. the buses leave Brook House, a facility run by Serco as part of a contract with the Home Office worth an estimated £200 million. The buses themselves belong to a company called Mighty, responsible for escorting immigration detainees, a contract worth £525 million. The people in the convoy of minibuses in front of us who are being deported under the Dublin III regulation, which means that the first country that they're officially recorded in Europe, that's the country who ultimately has responsibility for them. The buses arrive into a section of Stansted Airport reserved for chartered planes. A giant Airbus awaits. Chartered by the Home Office, capacity about 200 passengers. We don't know how much it costs the Home Office, but to charter it privately for a one-off flight of this distance would cost in the region of £30,000. There were 10 to 15 officials and security guards involved in the operation, not including crew and auxiliary staff. At around 7:30 the plane took off. Around 30 minutes later it landed in the city of Rennes in the north of France. So, how many migrants and refugees disembarked? How many people were actually deported in the course of this complex and expensive operation? One. Here, holding his bags. The others are French officials and police. His name is Ishmael. He's 27, from Sudan. After a few hours in a police station doing paperwork, he's released and given directions to his accommodation. He left Sudan when he was 18, went first to Chad, then Libya, Italy, France, the UK, now back to France. So, takes a moment before the next leg of the journey. A local charity picks him up, brings him first to a lawyer, then to a hostel. Turns out he applied for asylum in France when he first arrived here 6 years ago, but his claim was rejected. On a condition of anonymity, he spoke to us. So, what next?
والمهم هسه أنا اليوم هنا قدمت المهم محامي لو نجانا كويس لو ما نجانا بكرة برجع.
We asked the Home Office how much yesterday's operation cost and why Ishmael was the only one on the flight. They sent us the following statement.
The government's efforts to facilitate entirely legitimate and legal returns of people who've entered the UK through illegal routes are too often frustrated by last-minute challenges submitted hours before a scheduled flight. These claims are very often baseless and entirely without merit, but are given full legal consideration, leading to removal being rescheduled, and can effectively result in the timing out of a return due to the stringent Dublin regulations.
We spoke to the law firms involved in getting all the other migrants, many of them Yemeni, off this flight.
The Home Office's argument is that you brought these cases last minute and that you're activist lawyers. You're doing that for a reason, to scupper Home Office policy.
The Home Office is wrong in when they say that. These claims are brought responsibly. These claims are brought often at last minute, that I agree with, because they can only access lawyers in the last few days, sometimes the last day before removal.
Aside from where you stand on the immigration debate, whether you think Ishmael should or shouldn't be in Britain, deporting one person at this expense will for many smack of a deportation system that is at best flawed and at worst broken.
Well, earlier I spoke to David Wood, who was Director General of Immigration Enforcement at the Home Office under Theresa May, and I asked whether he thought this was a good use of public money.
Well, no, clearly it wasn't. But I guess what I suspect has happened is it's last-minute legal challenges, which led to a lot of the people who were going to be deported on that flight being taken off the flight. This regularly happens, although in my experience, never leaving one person left on the flight. Normally the flight would then be abandoned. This deportation process, in most cases, would have been going on for a year or more. They would have been through the court several times. So the Home Office would have fought all those cases and won them, presumably, for the deportation to take place. And then at the last minute, another challenge is put in place.
According to one investigation last year, the Home Office spent £250,000 on charter flights across a 3-month period without a single plane leaving the runway. So it's not that unique a situation. Yes,
There's clearly been breakdowns in the legal situation when you look at that sort of thing. I mean, at the time when I served at the Home Office, you never had flights cancelled to that extent. But there always has been legal challenges.
The Home Office looks like a department that sends out very tough messages on immigration enforcement, but simply doesn't deliver, and doesn't deliver efficiently.
Well, I agree that tough messages are put out on impractical things that can't be delivered. And we've seen that in the migrants crossing the channel. We've seen that in messages in recent days about processing asylum seekers on boats and in different islands across the world. I mean, I think they're fairly impractical suggestions that sound tough and could probably never be implemented.
But why put them out then?
Well, that's a matter you'd need to ask the Home Secretary, I guess.
That messaging is all part of the politics, isn't it? Whether or not these things are ever deliverable or even desirable.
Well, yeah, I guess that's the difficulty when something is so political and it has such strong feelings in communities about it. As I say, for those who believe strongly in a no borders approach to immigration, and those strongly who feel who are a bit more xenophobic about it, there's very strong feelings about it, and I guess that then the temptation is for politicians to talk tough or to play to their constituents, which they're there to represent.
And of course, in recent days, Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, has come out and said that the Home Office has learnt the lessons of the Windrush scandal. It will be a more compassionate department. Do you see any evidence for that?
Well, I'm not part of that, so I can't comment on that. But that is entirely and utterly the right approach, and I'm sure the officials who were part of that regret bitterly some of the activity that took place, and it wouldn't have been intention, it would have been a failure of policy, quite frankly. But I'm sure that lessons have been learned for that. I'll be astonished if they haven't been.
David Wood, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you.